You've heard Meleek Thomas is all but a lock, but do you know some of the other UConn recruits that Dan Hurley is after right now? You're Locked on UConn.
You are Locked on UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked on UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My YouTube support, absolutely amazing. I'd love to have all of my subscribers download the audio version wherever you get your podcasts. It's equally as important for helping the channel and the Locked On audience grow. So if you can do me two quick favors, first click that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen, and then head over to Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, and hit the follow button. This way you'll never miss a moment of Locked on UConn. I can't tell you how much your support means to me. It's everything. We've gotten some good reviews. I think we have about 20-something plus five-star reviews. So please do me a favor. Fill out a 5-star review. Even if you're not a huge fan of the show, maybe give me some constructive criticism. Let me know where we can go and take the show in different directions. And really want to try to find new ways for a new audience to find more interesting UConn content. So thank you again. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions, they apply. Well, we're past the July 4th holiday. I hope everyone had a great and safe day. Really trying to focus now on getting ready for the upcoming seasons for both the UConn men and women. As I've mentioned in the past, we are going to do a split show once the season starts. So that's a target for around the end of August, early September for breaking up the shows into a men's show and a women's show. But today we're going to focus on the UConn men and their recruiting prowess as we speak. We all are familiar with Meleek Thomas. He's a 6'4" shooting guard, elite scorer on all three levels, plus shooter. He's a slasher to the basket, has elite intangibles. His teammates love him. He's willing to work, puts himself out there at these camps and elite events because he wants coaches to see who he is as a person as well as in player development. And my most important trait of all, and the reason why I believe Meleek Thomas is a lock for Dan Hurley and the Huskies, and why all of the crystal balls are in the recruiting sites are showing that he is going to UConn, as well as whom I've talked to internally. He's willing to work. And one of my most favorite quotes and the most important trait for any player coming to UConn is by the late, great Jerry West, who famously said, "I'm a wolf." Meleek Thomas is a wolf. People talk about, he's got that dog in him. That's great. But outwardly, I want the wolf. This sign here, this husky, the origins of that are from ancient Siberia. They're huskies, traditional working sled dogs. That's where wolves kind of evolved. Are they great companions? Do I have a husky? Absolutely. But in their heart, they're a wolf. And that's what I want for UConn players. And that's what Meleek Thomas is. We've always wanted and will continue to keep that identity. Meleek is a wolf. I really believe, barring any major development, he'll be a Husky in 2025. He's our most likely and almost Sharpie it 5-star get. Haven't led you astray yet with some of my predictions. Not always right, but I truly feel as if this one is a lock there. Another a guard that we're looking at, lots of guards in this class that I feel like are where UConn and his staff are leaning. Darius Acuff Jr. His Final Four is UConn, Arkansas, Kansas, Michigan. Still needs to take a visit. Acuff, I don't know if I keep hearing two different ways to say Acuff. People always get at me on YouTube about me mispronouncing names. So I'm just going to say Darius. Darius is a player who stands out with his outward confidence and command of the offensive end. with the ball in his hand, he absolutely is in complete control of the game. He has a great versatile set of skills that make him a top target for a lot of elite programs, as I mentioned a few already. He's 6'3", so I feel like I'm going to say this, and I'm kind of cutting off a segment for later on. Ahmad Noel is 6 foot, 6'1". You have to have absolute incredible skill set for UConn to recruit you under 6'3". At 6'3", he's got this really powerful frame. He's got a physical presence that's pretty much undeniable. He's got +5 on the wingspan of 6'3", so he's got about a 6'8" wingspan. Allows him to absorb contact without being pushed off his straight line to the basket. He dictates. This is also something I feel like is a trademark of UConn that I feel like they had with Steph Castle, Tristan Newton, Cam Spencer. We dictate our pace. It's not the other way around. Teams don't speed up our guards. And I think that's something that they look for on a regular basis, is guys who go to the basket with patience, with probing mentality. Yeah, it's great to see a physical specimen like Russell Westbrook in his prime just bully people to the basket. And a lot of these guys can do that. But it's crucial when you're playing at UConn to have this half court. I'm sorry, I'm yawning like crazy. The ability to dictate his own pace and avoid getting sped up is just absolutely crucial for any guard at UConn. Whether you're the lead guard or a combo or playing off the ball, that is something that I know that they look for on an absolute number one basis. He has an ability to make tough shots. I think having these guys who are just dudes that can get their own is starting to be the evolution of what this offense is. Because yes, we can put you in a really great position to get to your hot spots, as we've chronicled over the course of this year with Luke Murray and kind of the analytics of things. But sometimes when analytics break down, you need guys who can just get their own, and Acuff is that guy. He's got good vision and talent as a passer. Those things are evident, though, like many young scorers, he can sometimes dominate the ball and settle for unnecessarily tough shots. So that's something he's going to learn at the next level. So defensively, I have no worries. I have no worries about either of these two. Meleek Thomas and Darius are absolute killers when it comes to being a physical presence on the defensive side. Very, very competitive. These are terms that you're going to hear all the time. So Darius Acuff Jr. would be an absolute perfect fit for UConn. His playing style is completely aligned with Coach Hurley's system. And I think when you think about it, I mean, look at what we just did. We just sent 3 guards to the pros. So you have elite developmental program at UConn. That's a huge draw. Coaching staff has a commitment to player development, and I think Acuff's talent alone can get him to that next level. But then if you hone those skills, I think you learn from these coaches, and he's playing against top-tier talent every day in practice. That is something that is absolutely huge. I think off the court, UConn provides good NIL opportunities, a great environment, an incredibly passionate fan base, an atmosphere that few other schools can match. We just sent 3 guards to the pros with 1 lottery pick. Doesn't hurt. And for players looking to make a mark and build a legacy, UConn is a perfect fit. Can't ignore that Coach Musselman at not Musselman at, now it's Coach Cal. Coach Cal at Arkansas, Self at Kansas, perennial powerhouses. We'll hope maybe Arkansas will be back to a powerhouse, but Kansas, as much as we like to make fun of them, they're always in the mix for these top players. So UConn has a lot to offer. I would imagine when you think about these guys, think about what Dan Hurley's envisioning of having a kid like Meleek Thomas and Darius Acuff Jr. in the backcourt together. It's got to be a pretty amazing thought process. And, thinking ahead to that is kind of part of college basketball. And we're going to do a whole show next week around how these guys are positioned, right? And what I mean by that is what the coaches see, because, they offer 20, 30 guys a season. It's kind of like the NFL draft. You have your top 30 visits, and you pick like a top 5 or 6 that you really want, And that starts to drill down to based off of the season, based off of who you really, really want, not to be too scientific. You have 2 or 3 guys that are absolute must for you, and you're trying to narrow those down. So I know that Dan Hurley and his staff are working diligently to kind of put together those lists and make sure that they have the type of players and talent that UConn fans can be proud of. So we're going to talk about 4 more guards. In the next segment, we're talking about Braylon Mullens and a center forward-ish Chris Cenac Jr. coming up after this. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S.-based customers. Okay. The Feel Good Lab, our sponsor in Connecticut, just seen on Good Morning America for their plant-based pain relief cream. It's my personal favorite sponsor. They have a special message for UConn fans. Did you know that the same things that fuel the best athletes in the world can still help the rest of us? Just ask Cam Spencer, who does every little thing he can to dial in his wellness, reduce inflammation in his body, and make sure he's eating foods that fuel him. And he does that with all the help of one of Connecticut's best wellness brands. Here's what he has to say about it. I choose to partner with the Feel Good Lab because I wanted to elevate my performance, improve my health, and become more educated on my nutrition. Since we started working together, all of these goals have been reached. Now I'm continuing to find new ways to get better with the Feel Good Lab, and I am very grateful for our partnership. In fact, that is exactly why I wanted to partner with Ryan in the Feel Good Lab. Plant-based pain relief and recovery tools, the highest quality supplements, in an at-home diagnostic test that measures what foods in my body actually trigger inflammation. Plus, they're an official partner of UConn basketball. I'm on week 5 of my wellness journey, and so far I feel amazing. So use code CAMSPENCER, that's all one word, for 12% off your order and a 10% donation to Bleeding Blue for Good. Okay, we're back on Locked On UConn with some talk around Chris Cenac Jr. and Braylon Mullens. The Chris Cenac Jr. stuff right off the bat, he's an interesting guy. Like, he's got, 50-something offers on the table. He is a 6'10" power forward, kind of a slasher, maybe a Samson Johnson type clone. I think that's something that we can really look at. But the only issue that I have with Chris Cenac, and hopefully I'm saying his name right, because I know I get crap for that. But regardless, you guys know exactly who I'm talking about. He's out of New Orleans, Louisiana. There's not a ton of connective tissue to this staff with him, at least that I can dig up or find. Still kind of doing the initial research on that. He is a good fit, but is he? I'm not sure, based off of, we got to look at things from a perspective of, is he going to be like a Samson Johnson, or is he more like the Terrace Reed Jr. type that is more of a scorer, less of a rim runner, kind of more of I think his frame is more Samson Johnson-esque. He's got some pretty tough competition for his services right off the bat, with guys with teams like Alabama and Arkansas. It feels like they're going to be in the mix for almost all the same players that we're in the mix for because of similar offensive schemes, especially with Alabama and Nate Oates. So that's going to be tough to crack. And like we mentioned before, if a kid isn't interested from the beginning, it's not that they're just like, oh, forget it, you don't want us from the start. It's more just they don't have to do it. Like, there's plenty of sorry for that. If you heard that, that they're not a sponsor of the show. If you didn't, then that was more of in my mind. There was a Hyundai ad that shouldn't have been there. But anyway, the whole point is Chris Cenac Jr. is kind of on the fringe. It's somebody that's been, associated with the Huskies, but I don't think that that's something that is a realistic possibility. And like we just talked about, UConn is not in the, is not chasing players. They just don't have to anymore. Those banners behind me say why we don't have to. And in particular, the ones over my shoulder this way. Yep, just above the C. Can't see it, but it's 23-24. Coming off back-to-back titles. No disrespect to any freshman, even AJ DeBonsa. If you do not want to come here, or it's gonna be a normal pitch. It's not gonna be anything like crazy. Like we need you to get to the next level. We're already there. So if you want to join us and you want to be a part of the impending dynasty, then feel free. There's plenty of room as long as you're the type of player that we're looking for. But the next player is, and before we get to Braylon, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting. Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a 24/7 sports streaming channel brought to you with the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. I've gotten quite a few comments about how they do enjoy Locked On shows, including my own, because there isn't that screaming aspect of it. It's like, you have to have this guy, let me give you 15 reasons why LeBron James is the greatest player of all time. You're never going to hear that on this network, and there's a reason why, because I think we just feel like it's oversaturated. If you want that, you know exactly where to go. But the next guy we're going to talk about is Braylon Mullens. I feel like he's the most intriguing prospect that UConn's into, because it almost mirrors the Liam McNeeley decommit from Indiana. Liam was set to go to Indiana, but decommitted and winds up at UConn. Mike Woodson, decent NBA coach, not a great college coach right now, but he was really able to crush. And if you're looking at transfer portal, numbers, just where these guys stacked up going into the transfer portal season. You have Omar Abalo, transfer from Arizona, transfer from Gonzaga, Kanan Carlisle, Luke Goody, Miles Rice, Langdon Hatton, all from the transfer portal. So you basically brought in an entirely new team and added them to two starters. And then if you were to add a kid like Braylon as a freshman next year, you got the makings of some culture, the ability to kind of keep players in your home state. So while it will be difficult to take Braylon away from his state's biggest school, I wonder if he'll branch out, because I think depending on IU's success this year will determine whether 25-26 recruit Braylon Mullens and see if he'll actually stay in Indiana or not. If he turns down IU, or we're in the mix there, I think UConn can really be there to scoop him up. Think about what he is. He fits the profile, the type of player that UConn has just put in the pros. And I know we're sounding like a broken record on Locked On UConn, but this is my favorite comp. Imagine if we got Cam Spencer, but as a freshman. That he was with Dan Hurley from the start. Ability to mold a 6'4" shooter who can blow by, get to the rim, because that's Braylon. And not to take anything away from Cam, who just got drafted in the second round in the NBA, and I think will have a great pro career. But Cam is not going to, win any foot races in terms of just straight line speed. Cam is a good has great footwork, is a good student of the game and understands his pluses and minuses. Braylon Mullens is a kid that is a good athlete who also has some of the same physical attributes, if not more, but we don't know if his mentality is where Cam's is. But can you bring him in as a freshman and mold that? That's what I'm getting at. And that's what I think if Cam Spencer had came to UConn from the start, it would have been a phenomenal time to have a kid for 4 years to watch him grow. And maybe he gets to the point where after 3 years, he's so good, he's going to the NBA. So that's what I think Braylon can be. He can be a Cam Spencer type, but as a freshman to kind of come in and just be molded. He also is the type of player that's a 4-star, borderline 5-star, who I don't think you have to not necessarily promise minutes to, but you don't have to worry about him coming in and saying, I should be a starter. This kid's going to come in, no drama. I know the UConn staff is keeping their eye on him, figuring out his visit. He said so himself on numerous videos. So that's the guy that I'm most intrigued about from a perspective of just thinking about who's a Dan Hurley kid. Who's a Dan Hurley kid that he looks at and goes, man, this kid I have to have him. Meleek Thomas is that kid as well. And I think they're very close to signing him. And then I think a Braylon Mullens is worth revisiting as we get closer. So we'll talk Darius Acuff Jr. and Eric Ribey coming up after this. There's nothing like catching a Major League Baseball game in the summer. I remember one game where the atmosphere was electric. It's memories like these that keep me going back time and time again. Now, getting tickets is a breeze with Game Time, an authorized MLB ticket marketplace. The closer to game time, the better the deals. It's like being rewarded for procrastination. I found some amazing last-minute tickets on the app, and I love that I can see the view from my seat before buying. Game Time makes it super easy with all-in pricing and their lowest price guarantee. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Don't miss out. Make every moment count with Game Time. Download it today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Okay, last but not least, we have Darius Acuff Jr. I didn't put that in the line there. And Eric Ribey. Eric Ribey is the only center in the mix. And we'll talk about him first. I don't get the sense that the 7-footer is truly in play just yet for the Huskies, but he's been mentioned in certain circles. But like the Mullens situation, let's just see how the warmer schools deal with their roster going forward. One school that is really hot on his trail right now, because he's another Midwestern kid, is Creighton. And look, Creighton's going to be without Ryan Kalkbrenner after this season. We're going to have to deal with him one more time. I know this is a fact, and I'm not making fun of Ryan Kalkbrenner. I think he's a great player, but the fact that he's a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year in the Big East, I think they diminish that Defensive Player of the Year award a little bit, just because no one is. Think about last year. No one would have said Ryan Kalkbrenner was a better defensive player than Donovan Clingan. And so I just think sometimes we, as media members, go out of our way to look at the stats versus the actual playing of the game. So sometimes the eye test can tell you a little bit more, and I think that's where analytics don't tell the full story. But here nor there, not to go on a tangent. Eric Ribey, 7-footer, 240 pounds, already has a pretty grown man body. I think he's going to need to hone his offensive skill set a little bit, learn to play some good defense. Type of player that I feel like, again, as a freshman center, can come in and be a project and be a defensive stopper. But again, I don't know. I'd put him at the Huskies at like a 5 or 10% chance at this point. And those numbers will always increase because I feel like the Huskies are the Dodgers or the Red Sox or the Yankees in baseball right now, which is every recruit is going to check in just to kind of see, do they need me? Do they want my services? Is there a thought process or an avenue for me to come in and play there? So that's where I feel like the Eric Ribey situation is. He's going to check in with UConn. I know they've kind of they've started to monitor him as well. Another guard, you could probably put him in the wing category because he's 6'5", but he definitely is a point guard. 6'5", long, lanky Darius Acuff needs to put on some weight, but he's a New Jersey kid. He was getting buzz starting back in 2025 when he was 15 years old, getting offers from Seton Hall in Virginia, from Shaheen Holloway and Tony Bennett. He was considered a great passer who sees the whole floor and delivers timely passes within the offensive sets, hits his open teammates with precision. UConn's interest has intensified as of late. He has an unofficial visit. He has an offer. And again, not to sound like a broken record, but there is this ideal profile. If UConn is recruiting you as a guard and you're under 6'3", you are a special talent. Maybe you have incredible speed. They see something in you outside of your measurables. And yes, I'm talking about current freshman Ahmad Noel. So with the Darius Acuff, with Meleek Thomas, Darius Acuff Jr., UConn is definitely trying to be guard dominant and starting to realize unless there is a Donovan Clingan that's a unicorn, 7'2", that's in your backyard in Bristol, having 6'10", 6'11", athletic power forward centers is kind of where they're going. And that's also why I feel like Eric Ribey may be out of the mix, because I don't think he's going to be the type of athlete that they're looking to have here. No matter what happens, UConn is absolutely in dynasty mode. Dan Hurley wants to vet these players and make sure there isn't one recruiting class or even one individual player that can start to kind of poke holes in that culture that he's absolutely cultivated and now has to sustain as a championship winning coach and organization. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on Amazon Fire TV. So go check that out. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. Happy Friday, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Zanetto, asking you to stay locked in, stay connected, make sure your toughness meter is always rising, and as always, go Huskies.